we find ourselves almost like replaying those early messages. I think what it takes to heal is is really challenging those negative views about oneself.
Mhm,
So just because this person hurt you does not
mhm.
mean that you are not lovable. Does not
Right.
mean that you are unworthy. Does not mean that you are a bad person. All those things that trauma tells us. That's trauma's voice, but that's not the reality of who you are. And so as soon as we can just sort of entertain the idea that actually you are good, worthy, lovable, period, then that
Period.
starts to shift the decisions that we make, how we see ourselves, how we see money, how we see other, relationships. But it starts with a different vision of how you see yourself.
Hey, ladies, welcome to The Woman Behind the Wallet with Prea Epps, the podcast for ambitious women ready to stop managing money and start building wealth from the inside out. I'm your host, Prea Epps. Now, you worked hard for everything you have, and yet there's this quiet feeling that you're capable of so much more. You're right, and this show is for you. You ready? Let's go. Hey, ladies. So, last episode, I got very real with you all. I shared my loss, the divorce, the bankruptcy, and even the rebuild. So, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, I suggest you definitely go back and listen to the last episode because what we're going to talk about today builds directly on everything that I shared. And here's what I know from living what I've lived and going through what I've gone through. You could follow the budget. You can read all of the books. You can even do step by step what the experts tell you to do. And you can still find yourself stuck in the same cycles, in the same patterns, making the same decisions. The reason behind it is because the inner work needs to happen. It needs to start from the inside in order for it to be reflected on the outside. That's why today's guest is so important. Dr. Tiffany Mimms is a licensed clinical psychologist, certified life and executive coach, and the founder of the Rosetta Center for Counseling and Wellness in Sacramento, California. She helps high achieving professional women of color move from burnout and overcommitment to lives of alignment, clarity, and joy. Now, I know I want joy. I hope you all want joy as well. She has over 20 years of experience at the intersection of mental health and personal transformation. So she understands intimately how the beliefs we carry about ourselves, our worth, and what we deserve shape every decision that we make. So, Dr. Mills, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Priya.
So, I do want to start with a broad question before we get specific. When you are working with your clients, how does unresolved trauma or grief show up in the way that people manage their money? Like, so what does that look like from where do you sit?
Sure. Yeah, such an important question because unresolved trauma and grief can show up in so many different ways. And so, one of the first things that I really see is that, it changes how we see ourselves. Unresolved trauma leaves, it sends these messages to us about our worth, about our values. And then that's where we make our decisions from, right? So, in terms of managing money, some of the things that I see are overspending. So spending to feel better, to not feel the pain, to not feel the grief, because it does make you feel better. That retail therapy, you find the good deal, you look good, and so then you think you are good, or you're going to feel better, and so maybe you do in that moment, but it doesn't necessarily last, right?
Mm,
Because that pain that was driving that is still there, right? Those messages of loss or low, not feeling important, not feeling loved, that's there regardless of the bag that we're carrying or, the new car that we're driving, right? So I
mhm,
see it show up a lot in overspending, for sure. Um, for some people also, right? So loss and grief and trauma can really disrupt relationships. And so we will
Mm,
find ways to like maintain relationships. So you might see
mm,
people who are like, taking their friends out on fancy trips or buying the drinks, at the club and all those things, right, that are
mhm,
fun and people, may or may not appreciate, but it's really an attempt to keep those relationships close. Um,
mhm,
and right, so that's something that I see as well. Um, when people have grown up in situations where money was scarce, right, then they might want to spend as quickly as they get it because they don't think it's going to be there tomorrow, right? So you see
mm.
that more, overspending. So it shows up in a lot of different ways, right? Um,
Yeah.
avoiding avoiding looking at our finances, right?
Mhm,
People who've experienced trauma carry a lot of guilt and shame. And then when you turn and you
mhm,
look at your bank account and it's negative, it brings up that guilt and that shame. So you just rather not even go there or
mhm.
so embarrassed that you don't reach out for help because there is help out there, right? There's no shame in being in that spot. And there are people that can help. But because of all the pain that it brings up, it's like, nope, no thanks. Don't want to go there.
Overcompensating, the guilt, the
Yes.
shame, you see all of that in some of the
Yes.
clients, that you deal with. Is it always obvious though to the person that you are treating, or is it usually hidden? They don't realize that they are overcompensating or they're overspending or, they are avoiding.
Yeah, yeah. Yes and no. Some people are very clear what they're
Mm,
doing, why they're doing, and they're not quite sure if they want to stop with the overspending, for example, because it's effective in a certain way, right? So there is
yeah.
sometimes some awareness, or for whatever reason, they're just not ready to shift that behavior. And others are not aware. It's something that they have turned to for so long
Hmm.
that they have forgotten maybe where it started, or they're not
Yeah.
really seeing the negative impact that it might be having on their lives, particularly their financial lives, that they're just not even, aware, right? And there's a
Hmm.
lot of forces, I think, whether it's socialization or, our family background that doesn't always encourage us to look at the emotions behind the behaviors. So people aren't always aware of kind of what's driving some of those financial decisions. Mhm.
Yeah. And you mentioned something, the negative impact may not necessarily be there. And so that may come into play if you make good money, right?
Yes.
You're making the money, so you constantly have it to spend, but it's not until something drastic or significant happens that you realize you've been in this particular cycle. I do want to talk about overspending and financial avoidance because I see it
Yes.
in the women that I work with. If you could just elaborate a little bit more on the connection between pain and those two very different responses to money.
Right, right. Well, they seem like they're very different responses, but they're actually
Hmm.
they're quite similar, right?
Okay.
So the reality is, Priya, none of us wants to be in pain, right? Like nobody
Right.
likes pain, no one likes to hurt. So all of us, right, we do whatever we can to get out of the pain, avoid the
Yeah.
pain. Like that's a
Hmm.
universal thing. So really what people think are two different things, overspending or avoiding, they both serve the same function, which is to
Okay.
escape, to get away from, to avoid pain, right? And there's no judgment in that again because we all do that to a certain extent, right? So the
Hmm.
alternative though is to just to acknowledge it. Acknowledge the pain, right? That especially if we're talking about trauma, grief, loss, like acknowledge that that is a real thing. And of course you're going to have some feelings behind that, right? And
Right.
we can sort of allow for that without running from it, right?
Yeah.
Or we also don't have to get buried in it either. But sometimes
Yeah.
just the act of acknowledging that we have been hurt can just turn the volume down a little bit on that pain.
Hmm.
And so then we're in a better position and we have more actually emotional energy then to make the more aligned financial decisions. But the more we run from
Mhm.
something, actually the louder and bigger and scarier, right? It becomes.
Yeah, it chases you until you confront or, like you said, acknowledge the
Yeah,
pain.
yeah,
So, what does healing look like for someone that has been in survival mode
yeah,
financially and emotionally, and
yes.
they've been here for a really long time? What does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the reality is that everyone's healing journey looks different, and we get
Mhm.
ourselves sort of set ourselves up when we compare our journey with someone else's. So let's give us all permission to have our own journey. So it can look a lot of different ways. I mean, I think sometimes it can be hard. It can be scary. It can be
Mhm.
slow. I could
Okay.
tell you it's never linear. It's never like, a straight line to progress. No, that road to healing can be rocky, right?
Yeah.
You're starting to do something new that's
Yeah.
unfamiliar. You
Mhm.
may not really fully believe that you can make the change, right? Shift your money mindset, change your financial habits. So it can be tough in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And it could also be a little bit painful too, right? When you're starting
Yeah.
to look at things that maybe you hadn't looked at before, you're
Mhm.
starting to I talk about like building new muscles to do
Yeah.
different sort of behaviors. It's like, when I go back to the gym after having been out for a while, it's not comfortable. It's not
It
comfortable.
hurts.
It hurts. It hurts. You're sore. Like, I don't want to go back tomorrow,
Right.
but you know the results that you're going to get by, continuing to show up. And so the healing journey can kind of look the same and feel the same, honestly. Um, at the same time, for some people, they're surprised at how, I won't say easy, that it's easier than they anticipated, right? Because sometimes when we are
Mm.
embracing change or we're trying to sort of heal from trauma, we think it's going to be overwhelming. We think it's going to be
Mhm.
miserable. We think we're just going to get flooded and fall apart and we won't be able to function. I mean, like literally, this is what people say. Like, I can't go there. I ain't got time to go there. I might get stuck there. And
Mhm.
sometimes people are surprised that actually it's not that intense. It's not that big. And just sometimes allowing yourself just to speak your reality is enough to start like,
Mhm.
okay, I can do
Mhm.
this.
Yeah. Fear or being afraid, I
Yes.
think we make it bigger than it actually is.
Yeah.
When you take that first step,
Yeah.
you may find, like you said, that it's maybe not easy, but it's not as uncomfortable as you thought it would be. Um, and you made that monster more scarier in your head. It's
Right.
it's crazy what we can think of and conjure up
Yes.
instead of just putting one foot in front of the other and doing the work. We spend so much time in our heads. So when they're going on a healing journey,
Mhm.
after they've been in survival mode, I know you said it's not linear and everybody's journey is their own. Um, but realistically, is it a month or two? Like if you could give me some sort of time frame around that, because I think a lot of women give up
Mhm.
before they
Right.
reach their goal because they don't necessarily know what they're working towards, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I want people to understand that there will be challenges, there will be
Yes.
obstacles. You may take a step forward and three steps back, but I want them to continue. So if you could just,
Mhm.
I don't know, just say, listen, it may take a year realistically, or it may take two. If you can just give me something to share with
Yeah.
the audience.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Like, let's really think through what the goal is, right? And so if we frame it in terms of what is one win that I can
Mhm.
accomplish, that I could realize, that I can experience every day, that I think kind of keeps us in that process. And so
Yeah.
sometimes though, even just that, in my opinion, that alone could be a win. To allow
Mhm.
yourself every day to experience that celebration of the work that you're doing that's success in my mind. I mean, especially when you think about the stories that we carry about ourselves in terms of our
Yeah.
abilities, our capabilities, our potentials. We put a cap on what we can do. And if we give ourselves
Yeah.
permission on a day to day basis to celebrate our wins and what we did accomplish that day, I mean, you have a quick win in a day. It doesn't have to take a year, 2 years. It can. There's a lot of growth that can come, but on a daily basis, we can see that progress if we allow ourselves to.
So what does that look like if we want to celebrate our daily wins? Is it
Yes.
journaling at the end of the night? Is it, quiet time? Like, what does that, I know it's specific to every person, but give me
Yeah.
possibilities. What could that look like?
Sure, sure. I mean, how about start the day with it? Whew, I woke up, I got out of bed. Sometimes that is the win because
Yes.
some people have been there where they weren't doing that. Yesterday,
Mm,
didn't get out of bed. Today, I got up, I got out of bed.
mm,
That's a win. Setting your
mm-hmm,
intention for the rest of the day. I know sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's not helpful," but it is. Like what we set our mind to, we're that much more likely to achieve it. So if I
mm-hmm.
wake up and be like, "Yeah, I ain't doing nothing today," that's probably what's gonna happen. But if I say, "You know what? I'm gonna really think through just one small thing that I can do today," that is one step towards, right, meeting that
Mm-hmm.
that goal. So,
Mm-hmm.
setting your intention to in the morning, I think, can be really helpful. And then why not throughout the day? Just regular quick checkpoints. "Hey, girl, how you doing?" Like, literally talk to yourself. Like, "Hey, girl, how you doing? How are you, doing towards, that intention you set, in the morning? Haven't done it yet? That's okay. There's still, time left in the day. You got this, right?" So reminding yourself throughout the day and setting yourself up for those daily wins. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, at the end of the day, reflecting back, all right, not so much, did you do it or did you not do it, but what did you do in that direction? Because any
Right.
movement, right,
Right.
is
Pro-
progress. Yeah.
Progress is progress.
Yeah.
So hopefully you are taking in what Dr. Tiffany Mimms is providing because she is really giving us actionable steps that we can take. Now, I don't want you to be at work or in the supermarket and start talking to yourself and saying, "Hey girl, how you doing?" Because you may get some looks. But
Right.
absolutely do that in a car and check in with yourself. I don't want you 302 because you talking you're talking to yourself. One of the things that I hear most from women is that they want to do the inner work, but they
Mm,
don't feel ready, or they don't feel like they have the time, or they may not even know where to start. So, what do you say to those women that are effectively putting up excuses? Because that's what they are, right? But they're very valid in their
yeah,
mind. They're very valid reasons why they haven't started.
sure.
But I want to break through that barrier, and I want them to recognize that it is an excuse and that they can move forward. So
Right.
what do you
Yeah.
suggest to those women?
Yeah. Well, sometimes, I just kind of take a pause and just sort of acknowledge that. All right, I hear you. You don't feel ready. What is it that you don't feel ready for?
Mhm.
Like I'm curious about like what it is that they're concerned about, right? Is it that you don't think that you're ready for the change? You don't think that you're ready for the expectations or other people's responses? Like what exactly is it that you don't
Mhm.
feel ready, for? I sometimes think about, sports, right? So is it that you don't feel like you're ready to play in like the big game? Well, no one's expecting that right
Right.
now. You haven't done the training, you haven't built up the skills. So that's not the expectation. And that's the expectation that you're putting on yourself that you're going to hit the ground running and just be at the top. Girlfriend, like that's not fair.
Right.
That's not fair, right? So it's like we need to kind of bring it down a little bit that we're not expecting you to go from 0 to 60, in a week. So no, you're not ready for that. You're right. So when you don't feel
Yes.
ready, starting at the beginning is exactly where you need to be,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And we don't have to wait until we feel ready to do the work anyways, right? We probably wouldn't do a lot of things if we
Ever.
waited until we felt ready. So that doesn't have to stop us, right? We can acknowledge it, but it does not have to, um, have to stop us, right?
Yeah.
That's where courage comes in. I mean, that's like the definition of courage, right? Like you're not sure, not confident, but you do it anyways, and then that's what builds that confidence muscle. Well, you had mentioned not having time because we yes, we hear that one a lot. I don't have time.
Mhm.
Okay, well, and again, I will entertain that. Let's talk about that because you know what? Sometimes that is true. Our schedules are so full, so packed that that might be the case. So, but the first question I ask is, okay, so how much time do you think this is actually going to take? Because sometimes, right,
Right.
again, our mind gets to going and we have all these expectations about what it is that we need to do, and it's not accurate, right? So
Right.
how much time do you think this is going to take? Okay, well, actually, it's only going to take, an hour a week. Do you still feel like you don't have time for an hour per week? Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I could do that. Okay. And then if we talk it through and really there is no time because that can happen, then we have to have a real conversation about what is it costing you to not create the time to do this piece of work that is gonna
Mhm.
take you somewhere in your life that you have, somewhere in your life that you have been wanting to go, right?
Yeah.
This isn't working. You wanna get to here, and by not creating the time, right, you're getting in your own way. So what
Yeah.
changes do we need to make in your schedule so that you can do the things that you have said are important to you and your future, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Building that confidence muscle. Everyone, we're building some sort of a muscle. When you're starting something new, you're like you said, you're
Yes.
starting at the very beginning of that
Right.
thing. And you have to keep at it and you have to keep going to get better. So the
Yes.
same applies to our finances, right? You are building that savings muscle. You may not necessarily be good at it at the beginning. Maybe it's $1, maybe it's two, maybe it's five, maybe it's 100. But as you keep going, it gets a little bit easier over time. And yeah, I want to take it back to the gym metaphor. When you stop and you don't go for a while and you go back to the gym, it is painful, so you're better off just keeping at it, or take shorter breaks. Because I still take breaks in the gym.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes my trainer calls me, like, "Where you at?" And I'm like, "I'm coming." But yeah,
Right.
so you just wanna make sure that you keep going and don't give up. It's hard for women to say or admit that they actually need help.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of women feel like they have to have X, Y, and Z in place in order for them to even reach out to a professional for help. So,
Yeah.
what do you say to those women?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Community is so important to our
Hmm.
success. Support is part of that community, right? And I think we set ourselves up thinking that we have to do it all on our own, right? Especially if
Yeah.
you look at communities of women, we do this together. And that applies to any work that we're doing. We need the
Yes.
support. We need the community. We're more likely to make mistakes when we do it ourselves. We're more likely to burn out when we try and do it ourselves. We don't have all the information, which is okay. We weren't all created to have all the same information. So
Hmm.
you are selling yourself short by not going to the people that really have the tools and the information and the skill set to support you. Right.
Yeah.
I think it really does, I don't know, it taps into us trying to like, I don't know, prove that we're something more than we need to by saying, I got to have it all put together first before I reach out for help, as if asking for help is a weakness. And it's just not, right? Like we
Yeah.
need each other. I mean, when you talked about your trainer, I was like, yeah, like utilize your friends, your support group, your coaches, right? That's the smart, effective, and I think humane way of doing this thing we call life, right? Is with those built-in support systems.
Yeah. And I want to reframe asking for help because
Mhm.
it can actually show a sign of strength. when you ask for help. So don't look
Yes.
at it as a weakness and
Right.
start where you are. It's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with starting where you are.
Right.
So I do want to get personal for just a moment and bring my story into the conversation. So when I was 10 and when I was processing what happened with my father and my stepmother, the question that kept coming up for me was if he didn't want to stay, meaning my father, who would want me? And I carried that for decades. I
Yeah.
carried it into my first marriage. I carried it into my finances, into the relationships I had after my marriage ended.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until I reached out and I went to therapy that I understood that that question was driving a lot of my decisions.
Right.
So when you think about rejection early on, those rejection wounds, how does it show up in women and how they relate to money? And what does it actually take to heal it?
Yes, yes. Well, first, I mean, I have to say I appreciate you sharing your story because I think the more we talk about these things, the more it gives women permission to share their stories and to start healing from it, right? Because there can be a lot of shame behind stories about trauma, and then it just sort of perpetuates, right? The internalized messages. So I appreciate you sharing your story so that other women can know that it's okay, right, to look at these things, to talk about these things, and to get some support, right, around healing. Um, so when someone experiences an early rejection like that, like you said, it leaves the message that you're not loved, that you're not important, that you're not worthy, right? And so what happens is people can go through their whole life trying to disprove that, right? So doing everything
Mhm.
they can to show people, no, I am worthy, I am lovable, and that comes out in the spending, like we've talked about. So making sure that you look a certain way or that you're buying things for other people or keeping up with other folks just to kind of prove your worth and your value. But that
Mhm.
doesn't last for long. That thrill that you get in the moment doesn't last for long because that deeper pain is still there. um, or you'll see people sort of replaying, right? Find themselves in situations where they replay that same dynamic. So they go
Mhm.
into, a situation, they're spending all their money, and then they get down to negative, and then they look at their bank account, they're like, oh, well, shoot, look what I did. And then they're feeling again like, see, and then those friends that were there when they were spending all the money, when they had it, have left. And then they're like, see, it's confirmation that people don't really love me, people don't really care
Mhm.
about me, that I'm not a good person, right? So we find ourselves almost like replaying those early messages. I think what it takes to heal is is really challenging those negative views about oneself.
Mhm.
So just because this person hurt you does not
Mhm.
mean that you are not lovable. Does not
Right.
mean that you are unworthy. Does not mean that you are a bad person. All those things the trauma tells us. That's trauma's voice, but that's not the reality of who you are. And so as soon as we can just sort of entertain the idea that actually you are good, worthy, lovable, period, then that
Period.
starts to shift the decisions that we make, how we see ourselves, how we see money, how we see other, relationships. But it starts with a different vision of how you see yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And not internalize it. I know that was a big thing
Yeah.
for me. I
Yeah.
internalized someone else's decision,
Someone else's decisions. Yeah.
a decision that had absolutely nothing to do with me. So, you know, it does hurt in the moment. Um, but it's not on us. We don't have to take that on.
No.
We can accept that decision and work through it and move past it. And so that's what I had to do to get to the root cause of why I was making some of the decisions that I was making. Now, I didn't necessarily overspend on friends but I overspent in other areas, right? And when I found myself in relationships and, that person didn't stick and stay, I'm the issue. Like you said, I am unworthy. I am not lovable. Everyone that I love leaves. That was like one of my big things.
Right.
Because I have experienced not just that loss, but other loss
Yes.
as well.
No
So I
doubt.
really took that on. But I had to just drop those bags, right? I was
Yeah.
just carrying all these bags, and you
Right.
just have to put it down and
Yeah.
realize that you are your own person. Don't look at yourself as a victim, but look at yourself as a survivor. And I would just put that out there to anyone that has gone through a traumatic experience. So I want to ask you something that I think will be valuable for the women listening. If they were considering working um, with financial coaches, what do you wish more financial coaches understood about the emotional side of money? What are we missing or what are we moving past too quickly? If you could give some insight to that. And on the flip side, what do you wish therapists understood about um, finances that may not always be addressed in your sessions?
Yeah. Yeah. Two great questions. I think for the financial coaches, I think that the goals that we set with our clients or the progress that they make could be hampered if we don't look at the emotions, if we don't sort of allow those to come up, right? Because it's either going to get in the way of the progress, or when there's a setback, it's likely going to be related to some sort of emotional trigger that has come up. So we have to sort of acknowledge, the feelings, and in a
Yeah.
way that is compassionate. So
Yes.
sometimes, coaches will, um, kind of be a little bit judgy about having emotion. But
Mm,
I'm like, we are human. Emotions are okay. Emotions are not, the enemy. They're actually helpful, and they can
yeah.
provide some good information. So like we said earlier, if we don't make room for the emotions, if we push them away, they're going to come up somewhere, and potentially in disruptive ways. So you think that you're on track
Yes.
with your goals, but the guilt, the shame, the uncertainty, the self-doubt comes up, it's going to undermine those goals. And that's okay. We just need to talk that through. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the therapy side, I think I would say that therapists aren't always comfortable themselves with talking about money, because we
Mm,
know money is very charged in our society. And so
right.
sometimes therapists really don't take the time either to talk about how is your financial life, how's your financial
Yes.
wellness, and how is that impacting other aspects, your mental health, your relationships. So I think we need to also spend some time looking at the finances as well, and being willing to work with financial coaches. Like, we can have a team approach to this. So, understandably, a financial coach may not want to spend a whole lot of time on the trauma, for example, or other emotions, but we know it needs to be addressed. So they can refer to the therapist, and vice versa. The therapist might want to spend the majority of the time talking about the healing work, but knows that some training, some education, some skills around financial wellness need to be there as well. So I really think that it could be a good collaborative approach, that could just be an amazing experience for any woman wanting to kind of, move through grief, trauma, loss, and be financially, in a good spot.
Yeah. And you
Mhm.
brought up something really important, the team approach.
Yes.
When you are rebuilding, or maybe you're past the rebuilding stage, you're in a growing stage,
Yeah.
or maybe you're at the stage where you're building wealth, you need a team of people
Yes.
behind you. You cannot build wealth alone. It takes, not just a coach, not just an advisor. You have to have accountants, CPAs on your team. You have to have lawyers on your team. It takes so many people to make sure you're building wealth
Yes.
responsibly. And I think that a lot of times we try to silo it and just separate everything, not realizing that it all works together for
Yes.
our good. That was good, Tiffany.
Yeah. Mm.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that. Before I let you go, though, I
Yes.
want you to give our listeners one thing that they can do this week.
Mm.
One action step that they can take to start healing their relationship with money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I would say, let's see here. One thing to start healing the relationship with money is take some time to think through what what money means to you, the good, the bad, the ugly, what money means to you, and what you would want it to do for you, what you would want it
Mm-hmm.
to mean for you. Because what that does is it starts that shift. It starts that
Yeah.
mind shift from money being um, problematic, being
Mm-hmm.
confusing, being harmful, being out of reach, to just allowing yourself to envision actually money for me can be stability, it can be safety, it could be freedom, it could be contribution. So just starting with that mind shift I think can be transformative and exciting in and of itself.
Envisioning what matters to you,
Wow.
what you want your money to do for you. You said a mouthful throughout this entire interview, and I'm so appreciative that you said yes to come on this podcast because you are a wealth of knowledge. Um, it's a couple of things that you said that stood out to me. One was
Mm.
that we're building that muscle.
Yes.
Two was that it takes a team.
Okay.
And three, start to envision what money means for you. And basically, going back to your beginning, what is your story? Like, where
Yeah.
does your story come from? I'll bring all of that up now because that was exactly my experience. I had to build
Mm.
that muscle. I had to envision what I wanted my money to do. And it took a team approach. I did not do this all by myself. So, if any of what Tiffany said to you resonated, if it hit home, I
Mm.
want you to stay with that feeling. I don't necessarily want you to move past it because once you acknowledge or once you become aware, that's the beginning. That's your
Yes.
starting point. And acknowledge that I am now aware of this behavior. I am now aware of, the cycle that I'm repeating, and you can move past it, right? So the work that Dr. Mims does and the work that I do basically comes from the same place. Now, she went to school for a very long time to get that PhD. And my hat's off to you for that. But the belief that we can build a financially free life
Yeah.
from a whole place and not necessarily a broken foundation. So the inner work that you have to do and the financial work that you have to do are not separate entities. It all works together. So if today's conversation showed you anything, I hope it showed you that you aren't broken, right? You're just responding to triggers, to trauma that may have happened in your life, but yet you're still here, you're still fighting. So there's still time to change that narrative, and that matters more than you know. So, Dr. Mims, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for sitting with me today. For the women listening who want to go deeper with you, where can they find you in the Rosetta Center?
Yes. Well, thank you again for having me. I so believe in the work that you're doing and just like the power and the ability of us as women to, yeah, to shift those narratives and just become more powerful than we ever could have imagined. So thank you for this space. Yeah, so folks can find me through my website at therosettacenter.com. My agency is named after my grandmother, who was another amazing woman. So I always like to put that out there. Um, and also on Facebook and LinkedIn at Tiffany Mimms. So,
Awesome, awesome. And the links to Dr. Tiffany Mims will be in the show notes, and she is also providing a free resource to you as well. Do you want to just give a quick overview of that resource, Dr. Tiffany?
sure. Yeah, really, really quickly. I think we've both over and over again talked about the importance of taking that pause and really checking in with yourself. And so I've
Mhm.
created just it's an assessment for you to look across 8 different areas of your life and really check in with how you're doing, what's working well, and what might not be working, and what's out of alignment, and just so that you can have that sense of awareness, and start envisioning, areas of your life where you might want to start making some shifts and changes.
Awesome. What comes next? I do want to talk about that because you may acknowledge, you may have that awareness, but that alone is not going to change your patterns or your bank account. And so that's exactly where coaching comes in. And so I work with women who are ready to do the inner work and they're ready to do the financial work at the same time. Because again, as I mentioned before, they are not separate pieces. So if you're ready to stop recognizing yourself in the problem and start recognizing yourself in the solution, please come find me. I am here to work with you all. You can book a breakthrough session. The link will be in the show notes, and we are starting exactly where you are. We're starting at the beginning with your stories, uncovering your patterns, and taking a look at your finances so you can start to build something different. So, again, the link is in the show notes, and thank you all for listening. That's a wrap. Thanks for checking into The Woman Behind the Wallet with Prea Epps. If this message hit home, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, leave a review. It'll help more women find the show. And remember, when she changes, everything changes. The woman behind the wallet is waiting. Go meet her. I'm Prea Epps, and I'll see you next episode.